It's great to have everyone on this webinar. So most likely we're going to spend more time talking about code rather than talking about slides and things like that, even though I do have some slides as a conversation starter. Today I'm going to be talking about a gateway API. It's a new thing. We just released a initial support for gateway API in Kong Ingress controller. And if you'll stick around till the end, there's one extra thing that you probably also will be excited if you are today with us to learn about the gateway API. Essentially, today we're gonna spending more time. I would like to spend more time answering questions rather than I am a technical person, so you can have any technical questions. If I don't know, because sometimes I don't know many things. If I don't know something, I know people who can help you, and I'll help to navigate these questions afterwards. So for a brief agenda for today's talk, in order to set the stage. Today we're going to be talking a little bit, I will just do a quick refresher for just 5 minutes on how the networking works and why the things that I will be talking like Ingress and Gateway are important. I will talk a little bit about the Ingress. Many of you probably already somehow familiar if you're running any type of workloads inside your Kubernetes cluster and you need to provide external access to this service. You usually may be using Ingress or maybe using load balancer, and that's why I would like to see your responses in the poll. So, and after that, we're going to be talking about the Gateway API. So what is Gateway API? What kind of problems, first of all, it will solve for Kubernetes and for users of Kubernetes. And after that, the rest of this session, we will spend doing demos. I like to go through the slides as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, because I know many of you are here eager to learn some technical details. All right, so in terms of networking, just real quick, we deploy our applications inside Kubernetes. Kubernetes cluster might consist of a number of physical nodes. Those nodes can be virtual machines or some bare metal things. And inside your inside this Kubernetes cluster, Kubernetes will be responsible for deploying your application inside the pods. These pods can be distributed across multiple nodes based on the replication factor and so far and so on. And usually, in order to get access inside Kubernetes cluster, you define a service with either the type of cluster IP or node port. Cluster IP allows, it's kind of like a default settings, allows you to get some IP address that would be addressable inside Kubernetes cluster. In order to get access to outside world, to provide the application access to the to your applications, we're using a load balancer service. So a load balancer service usually will have an external IP address external to Kubernetes cluster, and after that, this load balancer will be somehow either about to the service. You can create the service with type of load balancer, and you'll get the external IP address. Now, as you grow, as you deploy more applications, it quickly becomes kind of like a challenge to figure out how to get access, provide access to those those applications, to those pods from outside of Kubernetes cluster. If you have many services, like you either kind of like deploy a load balancer per each kind of like application functionality, but it very quickly become a very kind of wasteful the pattern, because in this case, like every time you need to get the external IP address. And that's why we kind of want to centralize it through some sort of proxy. So this proxy is essentially what Ingress does. It's an object that will be performing routing. Some of the requests that come into the system will go into this Ingress, and based on certain either path or either other rules, like maybe headers or some other stuff, it will be routed to a particular service. The Ingress object that looks like this. With the we have a couple things here. This is the kind called Ingress. This is something that many of you already did this. So this Ingress will be served by some sort of like Ingress controller. It can be an Nginx Ingress controller, or it'll be Kong Ingress controller, or something else. And based on certain rules, either it's going to be like a header, like I said, host, or particular path, we will route this request to particular service, in this case bills. So every time we will go to example.com/bills, the traffic will go inside this service. So underlying inside this Ingress, there's some sort of like a proxy server sits there, but you don't see it in the Ingress. So that's why you will be relying on Ingress controller that will be serving a particular Ingress. I will show you how you can define this, and there's like a standard ways, and there's some of the legacy ways how you can do this. Now with this, this proxy server actually can do some other things apart from being just a simple router. As a proxy server, you will be able to do some of the advanced things like defining some of the security concepts. Maybe you doing SSL termination, doing some sort of like certificate management, maybe integration with some other components like cert manager, external DNS, and so far and so on. But also there should be some of the traffic the management and traffic balancing. So here's the problem with this. So those stuff usually not defined in, it is not defined in Ingress, in the standard Kubernetes Ingress. This stuff is defined only based on the implementation. So you need to go into a particular implementation and figure it out how you define all these rules in terms of enabling plugins and in terms of enabling different traffic rules. I've been doing some of the presentations around how the Kong Ingress controller can be used with Ingress, so basically extending Ingress using the standard annotations. However, this is the like challenge for many vendors, and the initiative group figure out the some of the limitations of Ingress. Another very popular limitation, another limitation that many of you are aware, that Ingress is solely designed to be serving like L7 traffic, HTTP traffic. However, some of the services that you will be serving from Kubernetes might not be only L7. So it can be like TCP service, UDP service. So in this case, again, you need to rely on some implementations that your gateway controller or a Kubernetes controller will provide. So this is where we're going into Gateway API. So I will bring this slide one more time. So when we essentially define the Ingress, when we define this Ingress, the communication is going through the proxy, but proxy is not outlined in any ways. And you need to either rely on whatever vendor will provide you with some of the things. So there's no way how you can say like what exactly we're running there. So with Gateway API, this information would be a little bit more explicit. So this information would be a little bit more outlined. So with this Gateway API, we start getting some of the new objects. So first of all, we will, this particular scheme of like objects, so those things that I will be showing you today right now, like this one, gateway class, gateway, route, and particular service, you already have a service. That's already given. However, as you can see, those new objects are very much bind to kind of like a role model. So, based on this role model, we can have a more granular, security to distinguish different roles around different objects and provide different RBAC rules. So, gateway class, this is something new that comes into Gateway API, and we're gonna see how it works in the real world. So gateway class will be defining what kind of gateway we'll be using. So it's exactly what it says, a class. If you familiar with any type of object-oriented programming, so class is essentially a template. It's something that will be defining your actual instance. Where is a gateway? Its actual instance or implementation if you also came from a programming world. So essentially, with this with gateway, that cluster operator can configure to you. In different instances of this gateway can be shared across multiple developers. And as a developer here, you're just defining a route to move the traffic inside your application. One of the limitations that we have, the Ingress, that basically management of the traffic was handled, or different rules rather. You need to either rely on some sort of extensions, or you need to rely on functionality available in Ingress. But in Ingress, it was limited by, I don't know, path and host. But with the gateway, you will be able to define this routing thing, also based on headers, like some arbitrary headers. I'll show you in a demo in a bit. And after that, based on different rules, this particular thing will hit a particular route. This actually opens up like a very interesting concept that can be done through the gateway APIs. It's totally fine still using the Ingress. So as far as I can tell, the gateway API will supersede Ingress only from features perspective, but Ingress will not go anywhere. So there's no conversation around duplicating this. And having something that allows you to configure this more or less application-specific routing logic, it's actually very nice for many developers. So that's my slides. I don't want to talk about slides anymore, so let's jump right into the code. Before I jump right in, I will see there's a lot of chat is going on in a chat. So the first question supports ALB. Is it application load balancer that is in AWS? I need clarifications for this. So the short answer is yes, we do support load balancers in AWS. Need to know more examples. How Kong is better than traffic? I love this type of question. So essentially, I don't believe something is better or something is worse. There are plenty of different card types, and different card types, it's based on preference, personal preference, based on certain characteristics. You can buy the fast sport car to get you from, also from point A to point B. Bottom line, any car will get you from point A to point B. But you can get this with, I don't know, Honda Civic. There's nothing wrong with Honda Civic. It's a great car. But like, if you want to get from point A to B with style, adding some additional features, you can get the more advanced car. So think about this like this. So if some of the tools or some of the cars, some of the vehicles will get you from point A to point B, and you're enjoying the ride, that's all the best. I'm not the car salesman here, so I'm here not selling that this car, the Kong, will be better than Traffic or Nginx or Contour or some other implementations. I'm here just to present a technology, and you will decide for yourself. Is Kong and Gateway available as open source for developers? Kong Ingress controller is 100% open source technology. You can find this in Kong GitHub. So if you go to github.com/Kong, and you will find there's a bunch of technologies. Kong Ingress controller is Apache V2 license technology, so you can go there and grab it. Needless to say, this technology also works with open source version of Kong and also works with enterprise version of Kong. All right. Where does the name Gateway API come from? Especially reasoning for the word API for the name. It's easy. So it's a very easy question. So API, in this particular case, it refers to Kubernetes API. So I showed the slide. Let me see if I still have it a little quick. Essentially, when I was showing you this guy. So Kubernetes itself, as a system, as a technology, is based on API server. Kubernetes exposes different APIs to operating or to interacting with different components. If every time when you fire up kube control command line tool, you have you interacting with Kubernetes API. So for many people, gateway API might sound a little bit kind of like API gateway, like how they relate it. So short answer is naming is hard in this world. In IT, we know that naming and caching validations is probably the hardest problems, but picking up good name, it's also a problem. So before it was called Gateway API. So API again refers to Kubernetes API, Gateway API for Kubernetes. Before that, this specification was called, actually it was called a Service API, but it was creating even more confusion. So that's why special interest group and working group decide to rename it. So in this particular case, a gateway brings more into the table from perspective of a piece of functionality that will be available, as a name, it will be showing that it will provide more features than simple Ingress. So I hope it makes sense. But again, we can talk about these names and anytime. Okay, cool. So I will get back to the questions right after I will do this. So I have a Kubernetes cluster up and running. I already have something that's installed there. So first of all, I will start with the Quonk Ingress controller. And I install Quonk Ingress controller using Helm chart. So if I'll do something like Helm install, and I'll just do this one. This is how I usually install Quonk using Helm. And if I'll do ls, so in all namespaces and Quonk, we'll see that Quonk is up and running. Interesting thing here that I need to, in order to this thing to work, I need to enable this secret features. Not that secret, but we call it feature gates. And we need to tell that Ingress controller needs to start and in the form of a gateway true. So the way how it looks like, so if I go into my Kubernetes cluster and if my internet is still struggling. If I go to Quonk and I will see this my Quonk Ingress controller, and inside my Quonk Ingress, if I do something like gateway, so I see that when I run this, configuration was found for gated feature. So let's do, okay, and I will just do this one, and I'll just do gate. And in this case, it will start this Quonk Ingress controller with support of this. Now, I mentioned a couple things that this Gateway API introduces 2 or 3 or 4 few new APIs. One of these new API would be called a gateway class that allows me to define my Quonk as a gateway provider. In the concept of gateway API, this thing, the gateway class will be something that the infrastructure provider will define. So this is something like system administrator will configure, and after that we define this class. So in this case, if I go in my Kubernetes cluster and I say not this one, I will just go namespace and I'll go in Quonk namespace, and after that I'll show gateway class. So it says like there's one gateway class right now for Quonk Ingress controller. Now, so the next thing that I will define a gateway itself. So gateway will, the object that I will be reference and link with my routes. So the request will comes into this application. This request will be served by be served by this gateway, and after this gateway, based on rules, it will route this traffic into Kubernetes cluster. So if I will do something like, let me do this one. So first of all, why I did this? So we need to access this somehow. And in order to access this somehow, I need to go to services and define that this one service with load balancer. So this is the external IP address. So like everyone right now, if you have any tools that curl or Insomnia, for example, we can hit this. And I'll go ahead, say new request, my request, just do Kong and create. So I can go ahead and just copy this guy and hit this URL. So this is the traditional response that I'm getting from Kong, means that the Kong is up and running, there's nothing is configured, so I see that Kong is working. Also, I configured my server will be available on DNS name. So if I'll just do something like dig short Kong, I will be able to hit this. So this is our guy. So we're going to be doing with this, just do Kong, Proxy, me. Yep, it works, still works, so far so good. Now, so next thing is that since I already configured these two guys, I need to next have some sort of deployment. And if I can say in my namespace default, I'll have two services. One service will be responsible for providing me with Back to Future quotes. Another service will be responsible for providing me with Chuck Norris quotes. So those deployments are pretty simple. There's nothing really special about this. There's a one image that, again, you can grab it and use it yourself. And if you provide different environment variable, it will start either Back to Future or Chuck Norris facts service. So with today routing examples, I will try to configure access to both the services. Now, remember those services in our default namespace, all good. So next thing, that how we can configure some sort of, the access to this one. We're going to start with first the very basic example. We're going to be using HTTP route. This is another new type of API that comes as a part of the gateway API. So you learn about gateway class, you learn about gateway, and now it's a HTTP route. The way how we can link those together, map those together, is by defining this parent reference. I will bring this slide real quick so you have an idea what are we talking about. Slide with this relationship again. So this is what we defined as a class. We use a Kong as implementation of this gateway. Now we're defining this HTTP route. And this HTTP route will be mapped, you see this many-to-many, mapped to a gateway, and we will see how this will help us. So I'm go ahead and just do apply. So what it says, if I will hit, say, this server, no routes, but if I add header, say host, and that's gonna be back to future, Kong, Proxy, me. And now, what we see here, it's the response that came from Back to Future service. As you can see here, my application adds some extra headers that reports back where this response came from. So in this particular case, this response came from Back to Future quote service that is backed by, this is my service, and this service backed by this deployment. So if I go here, and this is my Back to Future service. Now, with this, if I will go and just do, say, let's see what kind of HTTP routes we have. So that's HTTP route we created. Let me describe. HTTP route connected to Kong, and it will, this is the part of specification. That's the parent reference. So which gateway will be serving traffic from this particular thing, and we're not going to use any path prefixes here. it's going to be our next example. So next example is using path. So now, like, if I will hit this particular URL, I will be, let me put this here. But now if I will just do back to future, I'll get the 404 from Kong. So there's, nothing is there. So what I will do is go ahead and just do apply. And now we see here in my HTTP routes, there's another HTTP routes that will be using path. So if I will go ahead here and do this, let me remove the header, because in this case it will be interpret and path and header with this, and I don't have a rule for that. So now you can see here, I'm still getting the response from this back to future. My response still goes through the Kong, and I have some payload is my output here. Now, next thing is that we want to do something a little bit more interesting. So in this particular case, we're going to be using the header-based routing. So we're going to be using a header to define what kind of service we want to hit. So in this particular case, if I hit this conproxy.me service with particular header, in this case, it's going to be arbitrary header. In this case, I will be using quote header with the roundhouse kick value. In this case, the traffic will go to Chuck Norris quote service. So let's try to do this. And in this case, I will go ahead and just do apply. And let's get back. We see my new route, Chuck header here. So if I'll just do quote and here, removing this guy. And now I have a response from Chuck Norris service. And as you can see, my routing was successfully configured here. So that's what it gives you. So you can do different sorts of routes, and more importantly, the similar way you can configure like the same communication to your services. Now, important thing to note that if you want to see, if you want to play around this with yourself, so you can go to this. That's my repository called demo scene, and you can find Kick Gateway API with a brief explanation what you need to do and how you can do this. That's very simple. I'll do a quick pause before we jump to another part, which is it's exciting. It was not advertised, and for those of you who stuck around for a while, you will hopefully you will enjoy this. Okay, so let me see some of the questions. Can it be used in the multi-cluster deployment? So that's rather very complex questions. So technically, nothing prevents you from using this in the multi-cluster environment. However, like how you will be deploying multi-cluster, and this is where we're gonna be talking something like this in a quick second. Usually. Bringing stuff like a service mesh that allows you to do like a multi-cluster communication, and some of the things that were recently announced in the service mesh world. Is gateway class and gateway are cluster scoped resources or namespace scoped? So essentially, let me bring this slide. So you defined the classes and gateways based on the cluster, and more importantly, that's the cluster operator role to define this for you. So as an infrastructure provider like Kong, we can provide you with the gateway class and gateway implementation, it's a responsibility of cluster administrator and the infrastructure provider to configure this. Now, they can be accessed. You can define a shared gateway that can be shared between multiple routes that deployed in different namespaces. So that's why you can see here, there's a store namespace, and there is a, see, this is the store namespace, and this is the site namespace. Those are different namespaces, but they can share same gateway that defined for them. They can bound these resources to this gateway, and this gateway can be shared. So I hope I answered this question, Anup. What's missing in Gateway API today that exists in the Ingress controller? So it's a very good question. Anonymous attendee, anonymous name, attendee is the last name. So essentially nothing much. So right now the problem with Gateway API and the wider adoption is still right now in alpha. If you go and see this, so all the API versions, let me remove this zoom table. You see here, it is right now in alpha 2. So it is not something that's like very stable. Another problem is that this CRDs, let me bring this real quick. So if I'll just do Gateway API CRDs. Where is it? GitHub. I'll go to GitHub and config CRDs. So those CRDs that currently stable right now, they're not as a part of your cluster. So you need to install CRDs first. After that, you need to bring a gateway implementation that is somehow you can find in this website. You can see there's the implementations. There's actually quite a few of open source projects and community members who are working on this right now. So, like in a technical sense, if we will comparing the Ingress and Gateway, Gateway already has a quite the features that allows you to use this like much easier than Ingress. For example, the header-based, this like a header-based routing, which is something that you can do, but with particular implementation. Like you can do this with Kong, if Kong is your Ingress controller, but there's nothing in Ingress that allows you to do that. You're extending the basic functionality of Ingress, and instead of instantiating header routing plugin, how I can do that with new kind of Kubernetes? Now I can do this with new kind of Kubernetes. Is that right? Yeah, that's correct. So previously, extension of Ingress happened on based on certain functionality that vendor will provide you. Again, Nginx, Kong, and stuff like that. And you need to have external plugins to do this configuration. With the with Gateway API, you not doing this anymore, so it's going to be part of the standard. How I can use Gateway API if I have a multiple Kong gateway running in the same cluster? Is Kik have much namespace and filter in Ingress? Very good question. I promise you it was not seeded. Very good question, Anup. Thanks so much for asking this. Here's another thing, interesting thing that will set up answer to this question. So you can find this very interesting thing when we define a gateway. There is a special annotation says gateway unmanaged, true or false. Right now, this particular object expects you to have a Kong deployed. But wouldn't it be cool if you can spin up the actual gateway, actual proxy on demand based on your particular request? So you define, your cluster administrator define you a role in your, not a role, the gateway class. And after that, you can, as you need, you can spin up like multiple different proxies for particular different use cases. So that's where the gateway unmanaged false will come into play, where there's something that we're working right now. It's right now in the POC state, and if you're interested in this type of JS, I recommend you to follow development in Kong Ingress controller repository. So there's a POC state that allows to kind of like spin up the gateways as you please. This is something that we're working on, a gateway operator that allows to start different instances with different, maybe even different configs for this particular use case. So answer to your question, so you can run multiple gateways within one cluster, and multiple gateways with the different gateway semantics. Now, I want to show you something cool before we go. Just the last one is very quick. Does Gateway API support MTLS? Well, it does support TLS. You can expose you can provide GPS for HTTP route. It's there. But MTLS between gateway and your service, I think it's a part of implementation details. So Kong does support this. You can do this with Kong, like MTLS between Kong and underlying service. You can do that. Okay, now, as I already said, and if I didn't mention this more explicit, Gateway API, it's a standard for API, so meaning that similar functionality will be available on the different providers. And there's something that we're working on say, another side of the Kong here. So how many of you actually know that we are working on service mesh, which is Kuma? It's open source CNCF project that give me a second. I'll bring the example of this. That's something that we're working on. It's a CNCF project that's called the Kuma, and in Kuma as a service mesh. Service mesh was designed to running your application inside your data center and providing this intra-application connectivity features. However, Kuma was supporting Kong for a while as an external gateway. Sometimes many users, they don't want or don't need to use Kong, or they want to use like some simple features like routing that I just showed you without, doing anything like super fancy, like enabling some plugins, or even this example with this MTLS, like the Kuma allows to do MTLS super quickly. And if Gateway would be part of the service mesh, you can enable this very quickly. So now the Kuma also supports Kubernetes Gateway API. So let me quickly spin up a Kuma. You can find example for Kuma as well so I will be doing this. Okay. In my demo scene, I need to go to Kuma Gateway API, and I'll just do Helm. Kuma also has the feature flag that disabled this by default. Now we will enable, and we'll see how we can do the same stuff with different implementation. That's kind of like one more thing that I wanted to show you. So it will grab the Helm chart for Kuma, and it will spin up a, let's see. I'll go to namespace called Kuma system. And I will just do port forwarding to bring some of the Kuma UI. So next thing, I need to deploy my applications. So the applications will be part of my thing. So in this case, I need to create a namespace that allows me to do injection of. Okay, so let's see if it's still a thing. If I'll just go to namespace, and I'll just do a Kuma demo. Okay, and I'll just do describe, and it still allows me to inject a sidecar container. So like inside this namespace, I will deploy my applications, and my applications will become part of this service mesh. So what I will do here, and I'll just do and 02 deployment, and we'll do this deployment folder. Kubernetes. So I will deploy these two applications now inside here, and I will see this real quick in here. Fresh. Okay, so now I have two services that runs inside my application. One service is a Back to Future service, and another one Chuck Norris service. Now, so this is how you can, run this stuff in your service mesh, and now you can enable like MTLS between the services and all these things, like super cool, super fast. But now what I wanted to do is to provide a gateway, as right now there's no gateway data plane proxies that will allow me to get access to this application. So for this, I need to do is to create a gateway for Kuma. Now, as you can see here, I also define a gateway class, but in this case, it's gonna be a gateway Kuma.io/controller. If I will compare this, let's do this comparison. So you will get compare files. Yeah, so you can see they are very much alike. You're going to be using the same thing. The difference is I prefer API version should go up. API version should go up. So this is going to be using name Conk, and it's going to be named Kuma. In this case, API version also go up. Gateway, annotations. It's not using any annotations here. And in this particular case, it's going to be named Kuma. We'll put this here for namespace Kuma demo, and now it also will create a gateway for Kuma. So let's do this. So I will go ahead and I'll just do, I need to apply this in particular namespace. No, it should work. It should work like this. So I should go ahead, apply. So now, if I go in my, here in KNIS, just go to all namespaces, and now I will be do gateway class. And now I have two gateway classes. As a provider of this thing, I have it here. I have a Quang is running here. Also, let me see service. So there's a couple things. Quang runs load balancer, and it is available in this host. And the Kuma runs a load balancer that's available in this particular host. So we're gonna be hitting this one. Give me a quick second. I will update my DNS so we can access to this host in a more fancy way. I prefer this. Instead of doing something like dealing with IP addresses. Now, so if I will do dig short conc mesh 82, let's see if it's a correct IP address, 82. Okay, so I should be able to get this. And when I do this one, just do HTTP conc mesh, and I will just do conc mesh and port 8080. So there's nothing here, but gateway is up and running. As you can see, his response came in from the gateway. Now, so what I will do here, I'm not going to do this one by one. I will just go ahead and show you the same thing that we did here. For example, for Kuma, where's the Kuma? For header-based routing, I will just go ahead and apply this with kube control apply. Should I do HTTP route name? Just do namespace Kuma demo. So in this case, if I will hit conk me.sh with this particular header, I should be able to get access to my check notice. So we'll go here, quote, roundhouse kick, and now, so what do we see here? The response came from Kuma gateway. I see that it actually comes from the service that is check notice, and it bound to my Kuma demo namespace. And obviously response we have. And the cool thing is that I also see this in my UI, because this gateway is also part of service mesh. It's part of the Kuma. So you can see here there's data plane proxies. One is the standard. That's my application that runs inside here, and my gateway. So now you can have this as a part of your service mesh as well. So let's see if the host also works here with here. We'll just do namespace, yes, correctly. Namespace here. And when I will go ahead and update this route, when I will go ahead here and say host back to future at conk mesh, and response waits is nothing to do with it. Okay, Marty. Okay, and response from the Kuma demo, and the comes from this the Back to Future service. All right, so that's it for now. So let's see if there's any other questions. Now, what you just saw is that inside one cluster, I have two gateways. One gateway based on conk, another one based on Kuma. With conk, you can have all things that are available in conk. With Kuma, you can have automatic integration with the service mesh. You can use conk as gateway for your Kuma, and but you cannot use. So you can use conk as gateway for Kuma. You can use gateway for Kuma using gateway API. So there's plenty of things that you can do. So there's like a variety of the things. Just all you can. Is there a difference between a conk Kubernetes gateway API and the conk gateway API? It would be nice to use KTS for provisioning data plane, but still have control plane to manage fine-grained control and the plugins. So I think there's some of the confusion in the naming here. So I'm not quite understand the question. Conk Kubernetes Gateway API and Conk Gateway API. So, okay. So probably the question is, can I use Gateway API, Kubernetes Gateway API, but also using some of the Conk functionality like the plugins? So as far as I can tell, I don't have examples right now, but as far as I can tell, it's also will be working the same way. You can define with the any, for example, if I go in my Conk plugin. So I don't have any like CRDs. So you still can apply all these conk CRDs, like for example the cluster plugin, conk plugins, and TCP ingress, and all these kind of things. You will be able to apply, and same way you should put the annotation inside your gateway or rather HTTP route. So if you go to kick and say here. So you will be able to put somewhere kind of like annotation, same way as you do like a conk hq.com/plugins and just do your rate limiting. Yeah, this type of stuff. So you should be able to do this as well. But some of the functionality that available in the Conk extending functionality needs to be handled explicitly using either Conk plugin and TCP Ingress and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but Conk-based TCP Ingress and UDP Ingress, all these things will be eventually available as a part of Gateway API. All right, I just have like 2 more slides that I want to people pay attention. We have a still good presence, right? From perspective of like 80 people joined, 61 people stick around. I appreciate that. That was great. I also appreciate if we will go to this nice link called youtube.com/conking. This is the YouTube channel that I creating a lot of content recently. There is a lot of work around the tutorials for Conk Ingress controller, using Helm, without Helm, just like doing the things from scratch, different tutorials for different tools. Just go there, click subscribe, enable notification. You'll see some of the live streams that we do. We have an Insomnia team doing like a weekly live streams that they can break down the process, how they develop Insomnia in open source. So I would really appreciate if you would go there. Plus, very soon this page will be live for the Conk Summit. Join our community. We have a great community forum. Ask your questions in Stack Overflow. Most importantly, I don't know why I didn't mention this in the very beginning. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter was conveniently placed on every slide here. So just go follow me on Twitter. DM me if you have any questions, and go follow for all announcements and the Conk Inc. in Twitter as well. And with this, my name is Viktor Gamov, and as always, have a nice day.